Welcome back to Dark Naruto Empire. Part 4 takes the story into even deeper territory as the consequences of Naruto's choices continue to reshape his destiny. New enemies emerge, hidden truths are revealed, and every decision pushes him closer to a future that no one could have predicted. Before we begin, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a new what if story. Comment below, Destiny Part 4 inches if you're excited to continue this incredible journey. Now, let's begin Part 4. Baby, it's cold outside. I really can't stay. Baby, it's cold out there. Minato happily sang out loud on his way home from work. Christmas was less than a week away, and just like every year, Minato was in the holiday spirit. The powdery snow fell down hard and made for slick road conditions. Minato slowly tracked on through the wintry conditions at a slow 30 miles per hour. He had been putting in extra time at the office lately so that he could have some extra cash for extra gifts for the family. Darn it, Minato hit the steering wheel and yelled as he approached a major traffic jam on the highway. After another long day at the office, all he could think about was getting home and helping Kushina and Naruto put up the finishing touches on this year's Christmas tree. Minato knew this could be one of his last that he got to spend before his son Naruto moved out and got his own place on campus. Minato checked the Waze app on his iPhone and it alerted him about a severe accident ahead. He began texting his wife Kushina that he would be running about an hour late. He tossed the phone onto the passenger seat in disgust and turned up the Christmas music on the radio. He hoped the festive music would make the time pass quickly to get home to his loving family. Back at home, loud flesh flapping and deep primal grunts were coming from the master bedroom. "Wow baby, what on earth has gotten into you?" Kushina said sarcastically while out of breath. In the middle of her brand new king-size bed, Kushina was on the receiving end of another extremely hard and loving request from her handsome 18-year-old son. Kushina laid still on top of the neatly made bedspread with her meaty legs spread to either side of the wide mattress. Naruto was on top of her missionary style while jabbing his neck deep into his mother's sloppy cunt. She looked up at her son and saw lust, anger, love, frustration, and happiness in her son's sweaty face. Suddenly, Kushina's cell phone began to vibrate on the nightstand to her right. With her left arm, she hooked onto the back of her son's neck, and with her right hand, she grabbed the cell phone. "Your father is stuck in traffic. Probably going to be another hour." She read the text message from Minato and tossed the phone aside as her loving son with more vigor. Kushina dove in and gave her son a series of love bits and licks on her son's extended forearms that were supporting his weight. The lovely mother kissed and bit her way up his budging biceps and along his collarbone. This caused Naruto's spine to shiver and tingle. The feeling made him hammer down a little bit rougher. The force of their had the bed shaking violently. Kushina fell back flat against the fluffy bed. She put her hands on the back of her knees and held her legs wide as her son beat down into her. "Did my outfit make my baby boy all hot and bothered?" Kushina said teasingly while staring up into her son's eyes. Kushina's thick beautiful red hair fanned out over the soft king-size pillow that her head laid on. While smiling up at the love of her life, Naruto feverishly nailed her matronly queen into the mattress. Like a well-oiled machine, he plowed his beefy 9 feet in and out. Kushina's magnificent gushed over and over again, providing the right amount of lube to allow her sons to easily slide from tip to root. She felt her cunt juices begin to splash and run along the rim of her and onto the soft bed beneath her. The head of Naruto's drilled and hit depths that his father could only dream of. Suddenly, Kushina's body started tingling, her breathing became overly erratic, and she shut her eyes tightly. "Oh baby, mommy's coming again. Keep me hard, don't stop, please honey. Don't stop," Kushina demanded. She grabbed the back of Naruto's neck and pulled him down so her mouth by his ear. As her son, Naruto can tell his mother's different moods. Growing up, whether she was serious about school, friends, cleaning, or doing chores, her inflections and facial features were extremely telling. In this instance, her tone was unmistakable. "Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze. Don't stop. Naruto. Shit, holy shit," Kushina continued to yell. The near 40-year-old red-headed mother was blabbering incoherently as she bear-hugged her only child. Naruto kept thrusting his into her, but her strength and rigid convulsing made it difficult for him to keep up the pace. 20 minutes earlier, Kushina and Naruto were listening to a few old Christmas tunes and putting up some white tinsel on their brand new Christmas tree. The living room was filled with music and Christmas cheer. While putting Christmas bulbs on the tree, Naruto accidentally dropped a case of the multicolored Christmas balls on the floor. Naruto got on his knees to pick up the bulbs that scattered underneath the tree. When he looked up, he got an eyeful of his mother's luscious backside while she was on her hands and knees. She was placing the green matting underneath the tall and colorful 8-foot tree. Naruto twitched at the sight before him. Her wide white bubbly in an extremely tight pair of green Christmas yoga pants was pointing straight at him. The festive form-fitting green leggings had red and white strips circling around from the waist all the way down to the ankles. The material was being stretched so tightly that Naruto could clearly see the lining of her full-back panties through the thin fabric. Kushina had no concept of what her arched leg was doing to her son. While her upper chest was on the ground, she extended her arms to smooth out the carpeting around the bottom of the tree. Kushina always had a lovely arch to her back and hips due to the years of dance class Naruto's grandparents made her take growing up. From his vantage point, the horny young son took in immaculate sights. Plump muscular hamstrings, sturdy calves, and that can make any man melt, painted toes, arches that were begging to be licked. Once the green carpet under the tree was in place, Kushina got the sense that Naruto was ogling over the view behind her. A normal mother's reaction would be to immediately slap their son in the face for being such a dirty pervert. Instead, the beautiful mother smiled to herself, stuck her juice up even higher in the air. Perhaps more mothers in the world should be so open and accepting. Naruto slowly brought his face inches away from his mother's cotton-covered crack. Kushina rocked her body back and forth, which caused her beautiful bottom to slightly tap Naruto in the face. Naruto's head was lost in a trance as Kushina feeds into his overly active obsession. Due to her workout regime and age, Kushina's lower body had thickened into an ample bottom that resembled Francesca Jaime's and Kendra Lust. But her heavy tits and cute stomach from the waist up was more comparable to sensual Jane. Kushina's face and neck is a dead ringer for Denise Milani. Maturity has been extremely kind to the 39-year-old mother of one. Suddenly, Naruto grabbed the sides of his mother's hips and began licking and kissing over the thin stretchy fabric. Streaks of saliva began to form on the soft leggings as Kushina giggled in excitement. Naruto didn't even touch his and it was already jutting out like a missile and causing his gym shorts to tent out massively. Just then, the song, Santa Baby, came on the Pandora radio station. Kushina quickly jumped to her feet and began singing. The cheerful mom grabbed the oversized red and white Santa hat that was on the arm of the couch and put it on. Kushina danced around playfully and sang along with the radio. Naruto was still on his knees in lust as he watched his mother start to dance around in the living room. Along with her enticing Christmas striped leggings, Kushina wore a white long-sleeved sweater top that also perfectly hugged her E-cup tits. The clingy material caused the bottom of the shirt to rise up and reveal Kushina's fleshy midsection. Since Minato was not around for the day, Kushina subconsciously decided to not bother wearing a bra underneath the clingy white top. Naruto couldn't keep his eyes off her swinging hips and bouncy. While dancing to the music, she pranced around the living room seductively. She grabbed a long piece of garland and started draping the entertainment center with the festive and colorful decor. Santa Baby, forgot to mention one little thing, a ring, Kushina sang, turned to her son and winked. Naruto stood up and stuck out his brick-hard boner underneath his shorts. She started to seductively walk over to him as the end of the song approached. She slowly put her arms up over Naruto's broad shoulders. While gazing into his eyes, she her head slightly, leaned in, and kissed her son delicately on the lips. Just like a normal teenager in love, Naruto's large hands found themselves all over Kushina's hips, butt, and lower back. Kushina's tongue wrestled with Naruto's as they fell into a doughy ball of love in each other's arms. Kushina abruptly spun around and grounded her into her son's crotch. The height difference between the two allowed for her to twerk her sweet apple-bottom butt against his hard. So, hurry down the chimney tonight. Kushina sang softly with the track. Next to the scotch tape on the living room ottoman was a pair of scissors. Kushina reached for the scissors and slowly cut a small hole between the massive swells on her chest. Kushina locked eyes with her horned-up son. She threw down the scissors, put her small delicate fingers in the new hole, and aggressively ripped her expensive sweater open. This caused her natural creamy tits to spill out. In seconds, Kushina and Naruto were upstairs in the middle of the king-size bed like animals. Creak 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 creak. After Kushina's body came down from another hard orgasm, she released her snake grip on her gorgeous hunk of a son. Naruto was still hard as a rock and lounged deep in his mother's vagina. Kushina breathed deep a few times to regain her composure. Suddenly, Naruto roughly worked his steel rod into his mother once and stopped. This got Kushina's attention that Naruto was not done using her tight. Naruto slammed into her body one more time while looking down at his beautiful mother with lust-filled eyes. "Pound it," Kushina said delicately to her baby boy. Naruto brought his hips so far back that he slid out of the wet warm slot. Hovering inches from the opening of his mother's, Naruto thrusted and slid back in. Once again, reaching all the way to the root. "Pound it," Kushina told Naruto once again as he hit bottom. Again, Naruto slid him out to a point where it almost came out. Then, with more authority, slammed forcefully inside Kushina. The headboard punched the wall. "Pound," Kushina said a bit louder. For some reason, his mother's instructions to pound away was driving Naruto crazy. The violent thrusts caused Kushina's perfect natural tits to bounce and ripple. Naruto dove in and began away at her left tit as it rolled up and down. Naruto did everything possible from releasing a sack full of warm cum into his mother's warm body. Naruto couldn't hold on any longer as his became a blur from overly aggressively fast. Kushina wrapped her slender arms around Naruto's neck and forcefully rolled him over onto his back. Once again, Naruto was taken back by his mother's strength, especially when she was horny. Kushina sat up on Naruto's lap with him still lodged deep inside of her. "Scoot your butt back, honey. Sit up against the backboard," Kushina instructed while her perfect mommy cunt continued to water. Naruto did as he was told and felt his pending orgasm begin to subside. His long strong wet bobbed as he shifted himself to lean back against the headboard of the large memory foam mattress. After placing some pillows behind him, Naruto was in position. Kushina quickly sat back down on his lap and guided Naruto's big back into Kushina's matronly position. Her enormous big round was directly in his beaten red face. "Baby, just relax and let your mom the gooey ball juice out of your big bloated nuts," Kushina said as she settled into a comfortable riding position. She leaned in and gave her son a quick motherly peck on the top of his forehead. Naruto instantly began grabbing and feeling his mother's heavy tits. Kushina looked at his cute face as if he looked like a kid in a candy store. He palmed the sides of her and gently pushed the round, curvy tits together. He let them go and watched them bounce slightly back into her natural position. Then he slipped his hand underneath them to feel the full weight. "Slap them," Kushina said sternly to her son. "Be as rough as you want with mommy," she continued. Kushina shifted her hips slightly, so she could feel his head bumping against the opening of her cervix. She lifted her arms to the back of her head, pulled her hair back, and slipped a hairpin to keep her gorgeous locks from getting in her face. Kushina could feel his racing heartbeat causing his engorged member to twitch and pulsate inside of her tight humid cunt. Her heavy tits shocked and wobbled as she finished pinning back her hair. "Naruto, do you think your mommy's?" Kushina asked while Naruto leaned in and started her wide pink nipples. He didn't answer as he continued licking and away at his mother's right tit that hung down in front of him. Kushina's motherly instinct kicked in as she placed her right hand behind Naruto's head. She gently pushed the back of his head into her tit. Naruto said as he smothered his face in his mother's hefty tit. Kushina said while focusing on grinding her hips a bit harder. Naruto's extremely stiff twitched along with his rapid heartbeat. "My mommy whore," Naruto whispered while popping Kushina's nipple out of his mouth and giving her right tit a hard slap. He smeared his face around which made his face and her chest wet with his own spit. Kushina jerked her hips forward hard and glided her hips back faster. She repeated this motion for a while. "God mom, you are so wet, I can't get enough of you." Naruto was having an out-of-body experience with his mother. He didn't know the difference down or right from wrong. All he knew was that he needed to enmaul his mother's and cum. Kushina's hips grinded on as the heat between the two began to grow. "Did I get you all hot and bothered in the living room earlier?" Kushina whispered while she began to bounce hard on her son's lap. "You like mommy jacking you off with her warm, wet cunt?" Naruto grunted loudly and grabbed a handful of his mother's as it bounced hard. He tried to talk, but was not able to form any words. Kushina's bouncing heavy tits tossed Naruto's focus into a trace. "My son is walking hard. What am I going to do with you? I should just walk around with short skirts to give you easy access from now on." Would you like having easy anytime access to mommy?" Naruto was on the verge of passing out from the dirty talk and hard pounding his mother was giving him. Kushina's eyes began to tear up from the overwhelming lust she was feeling. She placed her hands on either side of her massive spit-soaked tits and pressed them together. This caused her meaty and bright wet nipples to puff out in front of Naruto's face. Slam, slam, Kushina dropped her large fit mommy's butt down on Naruto's lap. The bed springs and box frame whined as Naruto put his palms on his mother's hips to help her keep her balance while bouncing hard and quick. Slam, slam, Naruto gasped as Kushina's butt slammed into his lap repeatedly. With all the guys Kushina has been with sexually, she never had an urge to with such passion and charge. After several months of this dirty incestuous relationship with her son, she felt even more committed to his love and pleasure. "I love you, Mom," Naruto said, letting his mother control the situation. "I love you, baby. Ah, I love you so much." Kushina's voice cracked as a bit more tears quickly filled her eyes. "Ah, Mom, I am gonna come hard. That's right, baby, come in your bad mommy. I need your thick creamy load now," Kushina whispered softly as she looked up to the ceiling. "Come, now," Kushina pleaded as she whipped her body all around. Naruto grabbed his mother's fleshy butt cheek with his left hand. With his right hand, he reached up to grab the back of Kushina's head and pulled her hair back. Kushina's wide motherly hips went into overdrive and thrashed fiercely back and forth. The back of the headboard shook against the wall as Naruto hung on for dear life. "Oh God, I can feel it. UGHHHHH. MOOMMMMYYYYESSSS come in NNGG with HHHUUUUUUU." Kushina yelled at the top of her lungs. Instinctively, she began sobbing and gripped her son in her arms with all her might. She continued to violently jerk her lower body to milk out every ounce of cum out of Naruto's balls. The king-size bed convulses with the power of Kushina's expert. Kushina lovingly placed her cheek on top of Naruto's head and continued to bear hug her son. Naruto spit repeatedly and Kushina felt every warm gooey shot. "Phewick, fill me up. I feel your sperm, honey. Oh God." Kushina exhaled as her body twitched beyond control. Naruto shut his eyes tightly as load after load fired hard from his big. He grunted with every shot that spewed out and couldn't help but drool into his mother's milky tits. Kushina's body shivered as if she was going through hypothermia. The mother and son stayed like that for several minutes. It took some time for them to regain composure and their breath. Whatever thick semen didn't cling to Kushina's vaginal walls, seeped out and ran down over Naruto's twitching balls as she sat on her son's heated lap. Kushina grabbed the side of Naruto's head and began to pull him away from her heaving chest. She looked down and there were thick water strings of spit that were connecting Naruto's face and Kushina's heavy chest. This caused them both to giggle and laugh. Kushina kissed her son passionately on the lips and peeled herself off of him. She rolled onto her stomach and reached for her phone that was on the nightstand. Naruto slowly moved over toward his mother and laid his head on her plump butt cheek as if it were a pillow. Minato's text message was displayed bright on the lock screen of her iPhone. "Should be there in a few minutes. I'm starving. Love you." Kushina read the message to herself and noticed that it was received 15 minutes ago. "Guys, where is everyone?" Minato yelled as he put down his briefcase on the dining room table. Minato noticed the Christmas bulbs scattered on the floor and the garland all over the living room. In the destroyed king-size bed, Kushina and Naruto looked at each other in horror. Kushina ran into the master bathroom and Naruto jolted to his room around the corner. The wild incestuous relationship between Naruto and Kushina had rekindled to new heights since the fall semester was now over. Kushina carefully handled their aggressive relationship during the school year over the last few months. She couldn't risk relying on Naruto to be smart enough to cleverly hide their secret from his father. Still being a mature and responsible parent, Kushina made sure to keep Naruto focused on his first semester at Dartmouth. The loving mother came up with an incentive plan to motivate him into having a successful start to his college experience. Such motivations included extremely wet hand jobs, blow jobs, oily tit jobs, and, depending on the grades he brought home throughout the semester. The only thing that was off limits was having actual intercourse with her in. It was her only rule. Not until he came home with his final grades for the semester. Naturally Naruto protested but understood. The deal was just as hard for Kushina as she was just as sexually energized as her son was. However, as long as he kept his grades up and put 110% focus on projects and the upcoming baseball season in the spring, she would make sure he was sorted out properly. Kushina would decide and initiate most of the nasty acts they would engage in throughout the school year. The day before Thanksgiving break, Naruto happily came home with his cultural geography test results. It was his only night class of the week and he got home late in the evening. Minato had poker night with his buddies on the other side of town. Kushina dressed in a cozy cotton pajama set and was paying some bills online at the dining room table. The PJ combo was light loose-fitting pants and a long-sleeve button-down. She had her hair pinned up and eyeglasses on while she typed away on the laptop. She had her cute size 5 feet propped up on the seat next to her and her legs crossed at the ankles. Naruto placed the geography exam on the laptop keyboard in front of Kushina. "Baby, that's incredible." A96. Kushina jumped up and hugged her son for doing such a great job. "Go grab a shower and we'll watch a movie tonight. 'Cause for celebration," Kushina said happily as she sat back down and casually resumed working on her laptop. "Oh yeah, what could there be anything else involved with celebrating?" Naruto asked, hoping for a naughty answer that no mother would dare say to their son. "Well, how about I make a carrot cake with vanilla frosting?" "Your favorite. How does that sound?" Kushina answered back. "Cake, that's it?" Naruto asked, slightly annoyed. "What do you mean cake that's it? You could have nothing, and I can say that we demand you to get good grades. In life, you're not going to get a cake every time you do something good." Kushina lectured her son. No, the cake is great, trust me, I will eat the shit out of that cake. But, you watch your mouth young man. Kushina sternly cut him off. I was hoping you would, you know." Naruto walked around and behind his mother's lovely body. He started massaging Kushina's shoulders and neck with his big strong hands. "You were hoping I would," Kushina said bluntly, pushing her son's hands away. "Where's Dad?" Naruto asked as he kicked off his Nike sneakers. "Who?" Kushina asked as a smirk formed on her face. Naruto sat down in the chair where Kushina had her feet up. He grabbed both of her feet and put them on his lap. In an effort to make his mother relax more, he started rubbing her right foot. He pressed 2 of his strong thumbs in her lovely arches. "Are you feeling frustrated?" Kushina asks while writing a few numbers down. Naruto said while he continued to rub his mother's feet. "Stressed with your college classes?" She continued while not paying much attention to him. "Yes mom, and mommy isn't giving her boy enough attention lately." Kushina followed but still focused more on the bills. Naruto was rubbing her feet hard. He raised one of her legs up and began grabbing at her lovely strong calves. He lowered his face to her propped up leg and began kissing her foot. This caused Kushina to moan slightly. She was extremely turned on by the foot rub, but also loved playing coy with her son. "That's enough young man, go get showered hun, hurry up." While in the shower, Naruto decided to trim his pubic hair around his balls just as his mother preferred him to do. Even though his mother was giving him mixed signals, he was old enough now to know to always be prepared. Once Naruto finished showering, he walked into the living room and plopped onto the couch. He had on a tight white Ralph Lauren undershirt and a pair of loose-fitting knit boxers. His legs were so muscular, the hem of the boxers rode high on his thigh. This was normal attire for Naruto to wear around the house, and Kushina loved it. Naruto noticed his mother was no longer sitting at the dining room table. Suddenly, he smelled the delicious aroma of baked goods being prepared in the kitchen. Kushina walked in from the kitchen and Naruto was taken back by what she was wearing. She had on an apron that had "Number 1 Mommy" printed on the front and a pair of black transparent pantyhose that came up to her mouth-watering midsection. The sheer stockings accented her matronly wide hips as she walked over slowly towards her son. She did not have a formal top except for the apron. Her large mommy tits sway freely while displaying massive amounts of side and cleavage. As she swayed her hips left and right while walking, her big soft wobbled and jiggled under the apron. Naruto stared at her in disbelief. She decided to untie the apron and let it fall to the floor. Her entire chest was fully exposed, and her erect abs stared Naruto right in his face. Kushina turned around slowly to reveal that the seductive sheer pantyhose was open in the back. Both of her bubbly cheeks protruded out the cutouts. The lovely undergarment had a thong sewn in, so the thin material ran up her butt crack. She put her hands on her hips and presented her obscenely looking backside to her baby boy. The pantyhose was designed to be a butt lifter for any woman who needs help in that department. Fortunately, this just made Kushina's already well-endowed backside look inflated. "Spank me." Naruto did not hesitate and began spanking his mother's exposed cheeks. He followed by grabbing handfuls of her mature flesh. Kushina let him manhandle her thick globes while keeping her hands high up on her wide hips. She stood tall with her legs, feet, and thighs pressed together. "Spank me," Kushina yelled. Naruto spanked each curvy milky sphere hard. Over the next 60 seconds, Naruto spanked his mother's perfect through her pantyhose. Each time he connected with his large hands, he followed up with a strong kiss over each bubbly butt cheek. Now kiss and lick your mother's cheeks, Kushina instructed. Her son was in an filled hypnotic trance. The kinky mom could have likely told her son to kill his father when he got home with a shotgun, and Naruto would have agreed just out of pure lust. For the next 5 minutes, Naruto ran his tongue and lips all over his mother's heavenly butt. He grabbed the sides of her fatty glutes and pressed them together. This caused her butt cheeks to swell larger and made her butt crack even deeper. Not saying a word, Kushina turned around to face her horny son and got down on her knees. She reached for the hems of Naruto's boxer shorts and pulled them off roughly. See what happens when you put your all into school and work. You see results, Kushina said as she cupped her son's heavy scrotum with her soft tender right hand. She placed a small blanket at the foot of the couch to catch any bodily fluid that may get away from her. Naruto slowly hardened into a steel pipe as Kushina rubbed and fondled the large nutsack. Kushina aggressively pinned Naruto's rigid member to his stomach. This allowed an unobstructed access to his heavy sperm-filled bag. The married mother spent the next 10 minutes giving her son's large oversized nutsack a good tongue bath. Up, down, and side to side, Kushina rubbed her warm slick tongue all over the place. She focused solely on his oversized balls, upper thighs, and around the base of the. She often stuck out her tongue and simply ran it over Naruto's ball bag. Clearly, Kushina was enjoying being dirty and messy. She drooled some extra saliva onto his manly nuts and then gently began rubbing the right side of her face gently against his scrotum like a cat in heat. It feels like you have an ocean of milk in these plump balls, Kushina said seductively, now rubbing her left cheek softly against his nuts. Kushina rubbed her entire face up and down Naruto's scrotum. He never felt anything like it. It was as if she was worshipping everything between his legs. You are so lovely. Keep doing that, Mom, Naruto whispered as he looked down in awe of his lovely mother shoving her face all around his low-hanging sack. Kushina put both egg-shaped balls into her big mouth and pulled her head back. She didn't let go, so the skin of Naruto's scrotum stretched obscenely. She locked eyes with her son and lightly jerked her head left and right. You, my balls are so good, Naruto said in between deep inhales and exhales. Baby, do me a favor. Sit on the couch and hold your legs back, Kushina said in between balls. What? Naruto asked confusingly. He thought for a moment that she was done. Do what your mother tells you, Pookie. I can stop right now if that's what you want, Kushina said rather sternly. Naruto slouched back on the couch, hoisted his leg into the air, and grabbed the back of his knees. Kushina placed her soft hands on Naruto's rock-hard hamstrings and helped press his legs back. It was then Naruto realized what his mother had planned. Are you ready? Kushina asked, but did not wait for an answer. Naruto thought his heart was going to pound through his chest. Kushina dove face first into Naruto's untainted area. Some of the spit that soaked Naruto's balls ran down and slowly hit Kushina's perfectly messy face as she tongued her son's. For a few months now, Kushina had shown Naruto how to properly man-groom himself to her liking, something Minato adamantly refused to do. The cake. Let me go check on it. Don't you dare move. Kushina jumped to her feet and shuffled back towards the kitchen. Her fatty swells, still streaked with drying saliva, jumped and jiggled as she ran into the kitchen. Naruto did his best to not move as Kushina raced back into the room after checking on the carrot cake. For another 10 minutes, Naruto had his legs in the air while he slowly jerked his steel meaty. Kushina ran her tongue from her son's to his balls and then spit wads of saliva on Naruto's purple head. Then the overly affectionate mother popped Naruto's cum-filled nuts back into her mouth and she latched onto one individual portly testicle at a time and made sweet passionate love to it with her warm wet mouth. She made a loud audible pop as she pulled off the one egg before switching to the next. Not wanting to completely ignore his aching, Kushina gave it a few tugs as she continued the assault on him. Kushina had to use her left hand to cup and hoist his heavy scrotum so that she could fully service his taint area. She dove back down and engulfed his ballooning balls in her warm mouth again. Her head bobbed fast and hard with the same vigor. Mom, goddamn, you're killing me. That feels amazing. Naruto was on the verge of passing out from his mother's verbal attack. Naruto couldn't hold on for another second as he couldn't get past the fact that his beautifully raunchy mother was practically making love to his balls, taint, and a few hard made his balls stretch so much that it looked like she was going to tear the sack right from his body. Kushina felt her baby boy's testicles tighten in her hot mouth but kept on at it. The horny son scooted toward the edge of the couch and planted his feet on either side of his overly affectionate mother. Mom, shiitt. I am going to explode soon. I have to come. I can't take it anymore. Naruto warned as he felt his balloon. Use my whore mouth like a jerk-off sock. Kushina said as she popped his balls out of her mouth one last time and sat back on her heels. Kushina stretched her mouth open extremely wide. A river of saliva ran down Kushina's chin and onto the blanket on the floor. Naruto's rock hard pointed straight up and he sat on the edge of the couch. Naruto forcefully grabbed a handful of his mother's beautiful red hair. Kushina knew what her son needed to do and braced herself. She loved getting manhandled by her strong young man. With his left hand buried and gripping Kushina's hair, he reached with his right hand and cupped her chin. With that grip, he was able to better leverage her head on his. Clearly worked up, Naruto showed no mercy and Kushina didn't want him to. Naruto pulled his mother's head down and placed his steel rod deep into her mouth. Kushina extended her hands down on the blanket, so she was comfortable on her hands and knees. OMMMOOOMMM. Naruto moaned loudly and he felt his head tongue the back of his mother's soft throat. Wet slaps and gargles screamed loud from Kushina's open mouth as Naruto started violently jerking his off with her throat. Her hair flew all around as her head was being whipped up and down his. The blanket at the foot of the couch was getting completely soaked from the amount of salvia that was being spilled from Kushina's wet mouth. Ah, I love your face, Mom. That dirty whore mouth is going to make my balls pop. Naruto demanded. Kushina was proud of her son that he was finally getting into raunchy dirty talk. He grunted like a wild bear running at top speed as he smacked against the back of Kushina's throat. Kushina had gone limp to allow her head to serve as a jack-off toy. Naruto's body tightened as he continued to whip her head up and down like a madman as he came hard. The crown of his head was hitting tight areas of his mother's throat. The angle was tough for Karen to swallow her son's cum. Cum and drool ran down Naruto's shaft onto his neatly shaved pubic hair and balls. Kushina coughed as she came up for air. Jizz and saliva spilled down her chin as she gasped for air. Did my baby boy like his reward? Kushina struggled to say as she smiled glowingly through the saliva and semen. She leaned forward and delicately gave Naruto's groin area little peeks and kisses. I better go check on your cake. Kushina picked up the towel and wiped her chin and top of her chest. She stood up in her high heels and kissed her son on the forehead. Clean up this mess before your father gets home, Kushina said in her best motherly demanding voice. And I want you to finish that foot rub later on during the movie. Minato, Kushina, and their only child decided to go to the gelato place in town after Wednesday night dinner. Minato got up to use the bathroom, leaving Kushina and Naruto alone at the small table. Hey Mom, do we have any big plans for Christmas Day? Naruto asked, sipping his chocolate malt. Aunt Trish and Uncle Donnie are coming over with your cousin Joey for dinner. Who by the way turns 18 on Friday. Kushina said while enjoying her mango gelato. Oh okay, I forgot, Naruto said, sipping his malt drink. Donnie and Naruto grew up very close, being similar in age. Your dad also wants all of us to go to church for Christmas. He said he wants to start going again as a family. Yikes, Naruto winked at his mother. Shut it, Kushina said with a smirk on her face knowing it would be hard for them to confess some of the dirty sins her and Naruto have been committing lately. Could you imagine Father Johnson's face if I said I was committing incest with my son? I can tell him about the time you dressed me up like Jessica Rabbit and me up the whole time in that tight red dress. Kushina looked up and put the spoonful of gelato in her mouth. She winked back at Naruto and held the end of the plastic spoon. Either he would die of a heart attack in the confessional or pop a hard one. Naruto said as he twitched in response to Kushina's confession. Ha, I doubt the latter, but wouldn't it be hot if he couldn't help but touch himself as I described you hammering your delicious meat up my fertile womb. Kushina smiled and gave a wicked sinister smile. I have an idea. What is the record of the amount of times you have ejaculated in one day? Either with me or by yourself? Kushina inquired. I don't know. I don't think I've ever counted. Naruto thought but couldn't recall. If your record is with another girl, I am going to stab your face with this spoon and you're walking home while you bleed. Kushina said while pointing the white plastic spoon at him. Ha, no, I think it's 4. I think it was that day over the summer when we had watched dirty pornos together. Naruto said confidently. Oh yeah, that was hot. I was sore for a few days but it was worth it. There is a lot of new freaky smut out there nowadays. I was surprised to see how many incest sites, roleplay models, and erotic fiction there was. Kushina lowered her voice as she mentioned the taboo websites they visited. They browsed some different fetish sites and got some kinky ideas to express their lust. Yeah, a lot of perverts are roaming around like us. Imagine how much money they make. Imagine how much money we would make. Naruto said half-jokingly. Yeah right, never mind that. Well, let's say we try to break your record this Sunday. We still owe you big for bringing home all A's in your first semester. I can't think of anything better to give my young man for doing so great in school. Sunday. That's like 4 days away, Mom. Naruto nearly dropped his malt milkshake. Kushina saw Minato coming back from the bathroom. Quiet you. It will be worth it, trust me. Let's try to go for 5 on Sunday. Kushina said and stared at her son affectionately. Naruto looked over at his father walking towards them. 5 times, Mom. Sounds like a challenge. Are you sure you're not going to get tired of me? You know how competitive I can get, son. Oh, I know. Are you going to let me finish wherever I want? Naruto asked. You're a pervert, you know that. Kushina smiled. Learned it from the best. Naruto quickly answered back. But you have to promise me that you'll wait to come. No beating that large slab of meat yourself, do you understand? Kushina said as she scooped a bit of her gelato and flung it at Naruto's face. Hey, Naruto said, trying to dodge the incoming glob of gelato. What did I miss? Minato happily asked as he picked up his melting plain vanilla ice cream. Oh, nothing. Just planning how I am going to drain our son's nuts this Christmas Sunday. Kushina thought to herself. Come number 1 to 7 a.m., before Minato wakes up. Christmas Eve morning came quicker than expected. Naruto felt the same rush he did when he was a kid growing up. He remembered Christmas mornings tearing through presents, playing football in the snow with her father, and most importantly, having warm memories of his caring mother showering him with love. Kushina woke up early, got out of bed, and turned off her alarm so it wouldn't wake Minato. She knew that Minato wouldn't be up for another hour or so and decided to get a head start on the day. Kushina brushed her teeth and made her veggie protein shake. She passed the glorious Christmas tree that was in the living room and stopped to take in its beauty. She began to tear a bit, figuring that there wouldn't be that many more family Christmases now that Naruto was officially in college. The empty nest syndrome is not easy to overcome. Kushina looked down at the presents under the tree and came up with an idea. In the basement, Kushina kept a large box tucked away marked, Taxes 2015, underneath the stairs. She figured it was safe because she handled all aspects of the family finances. The large cardboard box held all her naughty outfits and toys that she bought specifically for her new sexual resurgence. All the little stringy thongs, see-through nighties, corsets, garters, stockings, and hooker dresses that she would not wear for her boring husband anymore. Kushina often looked online for new exciting bathing suits and lingerie that would entice her baby boy. She pulled out a pair of leather thigh boots that had a large dried-up streak of cum on them. Shit, I have to clean these, she said as she held them up. Kushina reached deeper into the box and pulled out a few unopened items that she thought might be perfect to get the day started. Closing up the box, she ran upstairs to grab a quick shower. About 20 minutes later, Naruto slowly woke up to Kushina kissing him on his collarbone, neck, cheeks, and forehead. Naruto, Kushina whispered in between sensual kisses on his forehead. Wake up, my lovely little man. Merry Christmas, she said while giving him a very unmotherly kiss on his lips. Naruto wiped his eyes and focused on the matronly beauty sitting next to him on his bed. Kushina had on a white satin robe and her hair was simply tied back in a medium-high ponytail. She didn't have time to put on any makeup. Even without makeup, her face glowed in the morning light that was shining through the bedroom window. Her naturally beautiful complexion was as much of a turn-on to Naruto as were her motherly soft curves. Slowly, she got on her knees alongside her son's body and started to untie the sash. She let her robe part down the middle to give her son a glimpse of what she was wearing underneath. Her familiar perfume quickly filled the area around the bed and gave Naruto an overwhelming euphoric feeling. Kushina wore a pair of red crotchless thong panties and a green strapless seamless cotton bandeau top. The tight top was 2 sizes too small for her busty chest and caused her milky cleavage to form a deep canyon of flesh. There was so much skin that was exposed that she felt practically. The material just covered the lower third of her chest and her soft tits bulged out obscenely. The top of her bright pink areolas peeked out slightly and her entire chest looked like they could completely pop out at any movement. She let her soft robe fall to the floor as she slowly walked over to the bedroom door to make sure it was locked. Naruto's morning hard-on became uncomfortably stiff and strained against the material of his tight boxer briefs. Kushina's in the red G-string panties looked amazing. With each step she took toward the door, each bubbly cheek lifted and dropped. Naruto fished out his swollen from his underwear while never taking his eyes off his mother's deep crack, swallowing up the tiniest thong material. Minato groaned and stretched as he started to wake up. He turned towards the middle of the king-size bed and reached out with his left arm in hopes that he could spoon his lovely wife. He lifted his head off his pillow and saw that Kushina was gone. Turning back to his side, he saw that his alarm clock read 6:50 a.m. A few more minutes. Just a few more minutes. Minato said to himself. As he shut his eyes to go back to sleep, he heard a faint but consistent knocking coming from somewhere in the house. He opened eyes slightly and stared at the ceiling. With his boxer briefs pulled across his athletic thighs, Naruto looked down at his enormous morning boner getting manhandled by his goddess of a mother. Naruto had his legs slightly spread so Kushina could sit on her knees between them and work her magic. His legs draped over her knees as she hovered over his crotch. Kushina's left hand massaged and pulled at her son's full balls while her right hand roughly jerked the shaft. Her strong hand was an oily blur. She stopped to apply more lube. Kushina drizzled a few healthy drops on the piss slit and let the watery substance trickle down the crown and onto Naruto's long thick shaft. She inched a bit closer and resumed jacking him off. Wet squishy sounds filled the room. Kushina stood tall on her knees and focused all her attention on beating her sons and balls. Naruto breathed heavily and stared at his practically mother, jerking him. Her extremely small green bandeau top was disappearing in her fleshy cleavage as she arched over her son's body. The swells of Naruto's mother's fatty tits were rippling as her arm whipped up and down his. Naruto looked at his mother's ballooning, hoping to not miss them pop up out of her ridiculous top. What is that noise? Minato thought to himself. Still half groggy and sleepy, Minato heard a faint constant knocking. He tried to think of what could be making that banging. However, he quickly fell back to sleep. Ah, and you didn't masturbate, right? Kushina asked Naruto as she rode him roughly. The headboard of Naruto's bed was slightly banging against the wall. No mom. Ah, but it was really tough the past couple of days. Naruto confessed, feeling the weight of his mother's lower body pound onto his now solid rod. I know, baby, but you'll see that it will be all worth it. Kushina cursed and shuddered a bit as Naruto's meaty hit a sensitive spot of her unexpectedly. Feeling confident, Naruto grabbed his mother's wide motherly hips and gripped them hard. He controlled the pace and bounced his mother up and down with vigor. Kushina kept on her seductive thong and tight top. Naruto penetrated her in between the small slit opening of the naughty garment. We have to hurry, baby. Your father will be up soon. Kushina said as she leaned close to her son's face. Who? Naruto asked facetiously and smiled. Funny mister. Are you saying you want your father to walk in seeing his wife and son? Would you want him to watch while we engaged in the raunchiest incest imaginable? I can tell him our sons hit depth that no man has ever hit before. Kushina said as a mini orgasm hit the back of her brain and shocked her entire body. Kushina felt Naruto's steel felt and twitch while she whispered her dirty thoughts to him. Especially when she said the word, incest. Naruto listened to his mother while she talked dirty to him. He moved his hands all around Kushina's hips, lower back, and tits through the green top. He squeezed and probed every fleshy part he could get his hands on. She placed both hands on her son's chiseled chest and pressed her arms together to bulge her creamy out even more under the strapless top. This caused her deep yummy cleavage to bulge out even more. I should tell your father that I'm only giving you a Christmas card this year. I would hand him the card before giving it to you. I'd force him to make him read out loud what I wrote. What would it say, Mom? Naruto said while getting visibly worked up. God, I am such a pervert. I would write things no mother should write. Or maybe some do and don't have the guts to write. What, Mom? Please tell me, Naruto said while staring up at his beautiful mother. She leaned in close to Naruto's face and began breathing heavier. It'll say, Dear Naruto, Mommy will be your wife for the holidays. My body, heart, and soul belong to you. Kushina whined loudly and then smashed her lips forcefully against Naruto's. Her body stiffened and shook as her own words and thoughts made her come. Minato opened his eyes again and looked over, and it was now 7 a.m. He realized he should get up and start getting ready for the 9 a.m. mass. Suddenly the knocking Minato heard earlier became a little louder and more prominent. Is that the washer or dryer? Minato said under his breath. Kushina and Naruto looked deep in each other's eyes and once again, fell into a loving haze where nothing in the world mattered but the two of them together. Every few seconds, Kushina would lean down to give her son a wet steamy French kiss. She rolled her hips back and forth hard as their tongues wrestled with each other. Kushina's juices provided the perfect lube to allow her to glide hard with ease. The treadmill. Kushina must be on the treadmill again. I have to fix that thing, Minato convincingly thought to himself. Picking up his iPhone off the nightstand, he turned off his alarm that was set to go off at 7:15 a.m. Minato suddenly felt his stomach turn and he realized that it was that time for his daily morning bowel movement. Luckily for Naruto and Kushina, Minato went into the bathroom that was an extension from the master bedroom. In the master bathroom, the thrashing and banging that they were causing was virtually unnoticeable. Shaking the butterflies from her love-drunk head, Kushina looked up at the headboard and quickly got annoyed. "We have to get you another bed," she said matter-of-factly as she never let up its assault. Kushina's hot cunt juice dripped down and soaked Naruto's extremely hard and bloated balls. Naruto looked down at his mother's tight-fitting bandeau top. The bottom lining was being tucked just under her large bulging. The top lining hung on for dear life as Kushina's massive tits bounced and shook in the tight confines. He looked down at his ramming between the small slit in the lacy panties. Kushina's sweet-smelling hair hung down around his head as she held her boy hard. Naruto put his hands on his mother's lovely motherly waist. "I think we need to go to IKEA and see if they have a nice bed frame. Something that doesn't creak, like one of those modern-style ones," Kushina said as if she were thinking out loud, all the while smothering her son's face with her heaving cotton-covered chest. Naruto needed to come and he needed to come badly. All this visual and verbal stimulation was too much for him to take. Especially since he had not come in a few days. He decided to get up and move this session to the floor. "Maybe we can pick up some." "Whoa," Kushina said as Naruto pushed his mother's sweaty body off him and got off his bed. He quickly grabbed and laid his down comforter on the bedroom floor. His dripping long thick bobbed around as he grabbed his mother by the hand and guided her to lay on her back. Naruto pushed his mother's milky-colored gorgeous legs together, and off to the left side of her body. She shifted her body quickly onto her side and angled her fleshy right hip, thigh, and hamstring at her son. Naruto grabbed his pulsating rod and lined himself up to get back into his mother's hot hole. He dove between the crotch of her panties and sunk deep her steamy hole with one swift motion. Kushina's eyes fluttered as she put her hand over her mouth. Naruto hunched over the side of body and started humping a mile a minute. He hooked his strong arms around Kushina's shoulder for leverage and really beat away her smoldering cunt. Minato sat on the toilet and began texting his sister Trish. "It's going to be great to get the family back together for church. Meet you guys at St. Cathedral Church at 8:45. We all can go grab a bite afterwards if you want." Minato sent a few more texts to the rest of the family and decided to hop into the shower. "Spurt your creamy yummy semen. Use me to cum honey," Kushina said as she held her succulent legs out wide in a perfect split. "Ah, I am going to cum mom. I can't hold it," Naruto said in between grunts. "Doesn't mommies make you want to blow buckets of your gunky semen?" "Are you sure mom? It's going to be a lot," Naruto babbled into his mother's right shoulder. "It better be. Convince me that I am nothing more than a filthy incest cum dumpster." Kushina felt her son start to balloon. Naruto groaned deeply and savagely, his mother hard as if he was trying to her through the floorboards. He had his face buried in her sweaty neck and grunted like a bull. He looked down at Kushina's bandeau top as it rolled up and down with her tits. His large full nutsack repeatedly slapped hard against Kushina's thong cover. Naruto abruptly yelled directly into Kushina's neck and slammed him as deep as he could go. Kushina's 18-year-old son shot off an ocean of salty thick jizz deep in her moist vagina. He arched his strong back and thrusted forward roughly. He touched the bottom and grinded, digging into his mother's twat in between the crotchless fabric, desperately trying to dump 4 days' worth of white cum as deep as humanly possible. Kushina's beautiful eyes and mouth shot wide open. She did her best to not scream at the top of her lungs. It has been a really long time since she felt such a big cum that much and that deep. Naruto nested his face and mouth against his mother's neck. His deep breathing, groans, and grunts were sending chills from her neck down to her feet. "That's it," Kushina encouraged her son as she felt each strong stream shoot out and bathe her cervix. "That's it," she repeated as they began a light rocking motion during Naruto's strong orgasm. "Give mommy that all your pent-up sperm," Kushina said while pulling her legs back and higher. He slowly collapsed and put all his weight down on his mother's perfect body. He continued to pump and rock, spilling whatever thick contents remained. Even as Naruto laid motionless on his mother's body, she felt his buck and hardened repeatedly. There you go my baby boy. Let it all out my love. Deep as you can, Kushina said as she ran her fingers in Naruto's soft hair. Number 2 church. Do we need to fix the treadmill? Minato asked his beautiful red-headed wife as they sat in the large wooden pew. Minato held a Bible in one hand while putting his phone on silent with the other. Sounded kind of loud this morning. You must have really been hitting it hard. Minato finished. Yeah, I was hitting it as hard as I could this morning. I really got a great workout in. Kushina said, crossing her legs in the wooden pew. I woke up to it. I'll look at it when I get home. Kushina felt her heart sink a bit while realizing that the sounds that Minato was hearing was her and Naruto engaging in some raunchy incestuous. She immediately felt horrible for Minato, but also felt a sudden dampness begin to form in her panties. I can't get over how tall you've gotten, Aunt Trish said to Naruto as they stood outside the church. Once inside, Naruto sat down next to his mother and father just as everyone else was settling in. Why are we here? Naruto said out loud. Shish, that's enough. We are going to do this as a family. No ifs, ands, or buts, mister. Minato quickly replied. 30 minutes went by and it was time to line up for the white wafer. A Christmas tradition. Kushina and her son were last in line as one by one, each churchgoer ate the wafer. Put the phone away, Kushina said sternly. Naruto annoyingly exhaled as he put his phone back in this pocket. He looked forward and focused his attention on Kushina's backside. Well, I definitely have other things that I can concentrate on, Naruto said jokingly. Enough. Kushina acts like a typical annoyed mother who can't keep control of her kid. Kushina looked forward for a few minutes as the line got closer to the priest. To Naruto it seemed as if she was ignoring him. With one person in line left in front of Kushina, she turned around and whispered back at Naruto. Okay, when we get to the seat, I am going to say you're sick. Just follow my lead. Kushina, my blessed child Kushina, how are you and the family? The older priest asked gleefully. We are great. You remember my son Naruto? Kushina asked as she turned and hooked her arm with Naruto's. Well, of course. Look at you. You've grown into a fine young man from what I hear. I remember when you were 3 or 4 creating havoc during Sunday school. It is so great to see you both again. The priest smiled, then handed the ceremonial toast to both Kushina and Naruto. Kushina felt a huge rush of lust overwhelm her while she stood in front of the priest with her tall and handsome new man. She felt slightly lightheaded from the sudden onset of love. With a dazed look on her face, she felt as if the devil jumped into her body. Standing in front of a man of God, her husband hearing her and her son this morning, and the rush of Naruto standing next to her at the altar was way too much for her. Kushina, you okay? You seem a bit faint. Yes, father. I think I just need to go sit down. Naruto and Kushina walked back to where the rest of the family sat. Naruto still isn't feeling so well, we are going to run around the corner and get him some water or something. Kushina said. Here, I'll give him some cash and he can go get it. Minato said. No, I'll go with him to make sure he picks up the right stuff. Kushina, don't you think you're babying him just a bit? Minato asked while sitting with his sister, Trish. The loving red-headed mother ignored her blonde husband and walked out of the church with Naruto by her side. A 60-year-old Walgreen employee walked out of the back door of the convenience store. In her hand was a large trash bag. She walked up the hidden trash compactor that was located against the rear of the store. She opened the side hatch and tossed the garbage. As she slowly turned to make her way back inside, she noticed a gray Lexus RX SUV parked alone in the last parking spot behind the building. The vehicle was violently shaking and bouncing around on its suspension. The prudish older woman realized right away what was going on inside. In disgust, she put her hand over her mouth and ran back inside. Jesus Christ, I am so horny, Kushina screamed as her body convulsed. The whole idea of ditching church to her son's brains made Kushina out of control. Her baby blue panties were bunched up in Naruto's hand while she locked her hands around the back of her son's neck. Naruto's khakis were down around his ankles while the two were in the back seat. It was as if the devil had possessed Kushina's body. Oh my god, Mom, you are such a filthy whore. Naruto struggled to say as he felt his mother's powerful lower body bounce hard on his lap. That's right, honey. Make me take your big. Treat me like I'm a tramp for acting this way. This is I own it and I want Dad to ask me permission to even think about it. Naruto's confession added to Kushina's lust-filled thoughts. OMMMYYYYGGGGOOOOODDDDD, Kushina screamed as she put her right hand on the ceiling of the car so that her head wouldn't smack against it. As she straddled her son, she looked down at her helpless prey like a starving wolf. She imagined the conversation Minato and Naruto would have regarding their twisted relationship. Her husband of 20 years asked their 18-year-old son if he would be allowed to touch his wife. Asking nicely for permission to even look at her that way. Kushina felt another rush of perversion in her son as hard as she could into the backseat of the SUV. The horny mother and son fell into a 5-minute unconditional love-filled cloud that can only be described as magical. Their bodies in unison, a perfect mixture of fast and hard and then soft and sweet. She grounded her and whipped her hips on her son's hard erection. Suddenly, Kushina aggressively grabbed both of Naruto's hands and put them over her throat. "Choke me," Kushina said, knowing she needed to hurry things up a bit. Naruto did as he was told but couldn't enjoy and soak in the full scope of his mother's request. He had been on the verge of coming for several minutes and this put him over the edge. "Mom, I am going to come. Are you sure you're safe?" Naruto asked while he loosened his grip. "What, you wouldn't want me to see me strut around the house pregnant in the naughtiest and most obscene maternity lingerie? Or parade me around church while carrying your baby, you dirty pervert?" Kushina slowed her bouncing a bit and threw her head back, feeling another wave hitting every nerve ending in her body. "Oh God, I am coming again." The kinky mother grinded her hips and blew her top. She whipped her head left and right and her hair flew around. Her raunchy language and Naruto's rock hard was making Kushina come over and over again. Kushina put her face against her son's while she caught her breath. She lightly pumped her hips and purred against his body. Naruto felt her mother's juice gush down and soak his balls. Naruto felt his nuts twitch. That familiar feeling right before he released a huge load. "Look me in the eyes, honey. Don't look away." Kushina continued to feel Naruto's heartbeat through his that was lodged in her mature cunt. She looked outside the car windows for a second, affirming that nobody was in the parking lot. Naruto looked up at his mother with begging eyes. "Fill your mother, cunt," Kushina yelled. As soon as Kushina felt the first load shot out of Naruto's reach, she started bouncing hard again with more vigor. Naruto cringed as his mother's body smacked hard onto his lap, pulling the second load of the day from his full balls. Come number 3 to 1 p.m., before Minato's get back home from the store. Kushina and Naruto decided to go straight home after their quick rendezvous in the car. A few hours went by as Kushina prepped for dinner at home. She texted Minato to pick up a few items at the grocery store on his way back from the church gathering. "Shit, Dad just pulled up," Naruto said with his long 9 inches in his hand. He was masturbating himself rather hard but stopped when he heard his father's car pull up into the driveway. However, Kushina was on her knees in front of her horny son, fully dressed in a lovely black long-sleeved turtleneck sweater and a dark blue pair of skinny jeans. "Well, I guess you need to hurry up then," Kushina said softly as she looked up at her tall boy. She slowly rubbed his thighs as a form of encouragement. Naruto nervously looked towards the kitchen door and then back down at his exquisite-looking mother on her knees. Kushina's glamorous face had a light shade of blush on her full cheeks. Her mesmerizing purple eyes were outlined in a thin-line dark mascara. The inviting full lips had a dark shade of pink lipstick on them. Her thick blood-red ruby hair was split down the center of the top of her head and flowed down past her broad shoulders. The flowing mane started straight and then began a wavy curl as it descended. Kushina hooked her hair around the back of her ears to better reveal the entire surface of her perfectly symmetrical face. The thick material of the black top extended up to the top of her thin slender neck. The shade of her hair and black turtleneck accented her creamy white skin and highlighted her radiant facial features. "It's up to you, Naruto. Why don't you let me up so I can greet your father at the door? Obviously, you want to piss your milky jizz all over my face. But perhaps you don't have the balls to do it while your father is coming in." Clearly Kushina was egging and challenging her son, hoping he would take action quickly. "Baby, a man knows what he wants and takes what he wants." Kushina looked up at her boy with a serious face. Naruto started jerking off really hard and fast again. Kushina judged by the size of Naruto's bouncing balls and fast jerking, that he needed to orgasm right away. "Mom, I am going to jerk off all over your pretty face." Naruto focused all attention on beating off as quick as he could. "Oh, you are you? You nasty boy, how could you do such a god-awful thing to your poor old mother? Why do you enjoy seeing my whore face caked with your gross baby batter?" Kushina asked, but she knew the answer. She loved pushing her son's buttons with descriptive dirty talk. "I just did my makeup. You'd blast your thick sperm on my face right before I am supposed to meet your father. Your creamy white gunk will surely stain my black top. Kushina said innocently. Get ready, don't move, Naruto urgently while aiming the tip a bit closer to mother's heavenly face. Wow, yes sir. Well, I guess there is no talking you out of dumping your delicious semen on me. Kushina said sarcastically. Naruto heard the trunk of the SUV shut. His heavy balls jumped and shook with the rhythm of his hard jerking. He leaned forward a few more inches, steadied the tip of his head, and aimed. Naruto, empty your balls right now. Jerk off on mommy's stupid cunt face. Kushina yelled up at her son just as the first stream of cum shot out of Naruto's large. Naruto roared and started blowing extremely huge gooey white streaks onto her upturned face. The first sailed and landed right on her forehead and lined up into her hair. With his left hand, he reached around the back of his mother's head and gripped her by her hair. He held her tightly to prevent her from moving, not that Kushina had any intentions either. Kushina smiled big and laughed slightly as huge ribbons of cum streaked from her chin to the top of her head. The sheer volume of cum that was spurting out made Kushina giggle in disbelief. While the entire load blasted out on her beautiful glowing face, she never broke eye contact or even shut her eyes. The volleys shot forcefully against her face, but the lovely mother's makeup caused her son's semen to stick. Naruto grunted deeply as he pulled each load from his balls and onto his mother. He angled his to make sure he kept all shots onto her face. A long thick string landed over the center of her nose. Another glob shot and creamed directly on Kushina's right eye socket. This finally forced her to close her eyes as the heavy pool settled into her eyelashes and eyelids. A series of smaller drops were a bit weaker and landed down onto her black sweater just above the chest area. Kushina's face was beyond ruined. The sticky mess was streaked from hairline to her chin. Even Naruto was surprised how much cum he produced even though he came twice already today. Are you done using my skank face as your disgusting cum dump? Kushina reached to scoop the gunky paste out of her eye socket. The kitchen door opened that led in from the garage. Though Kushina and Naruto were in the living room and out of view, Kushina felt it was time to end this debauchery. She quickly got up and ran across the living room and upstairs. As she skipped up the stairs, large dabs of cum that were on the lower half of her face dripped down onto her black sweater. Naruto stuffed his still hard into pants with a huge smile on his face. Naruto, can you help me with some of these groceries? Sure dad. Where's your mom? Minato asked. I think she's taking a shower, Naruto said as he walked into the kitchen. His still twitching pressed hard against his jeans which caused him to walk a little funny. Jesus, we're going to be late again. Cum number 4 to 5 p.m., home videos. Naruto, come look at these. Minato yelled from the living. He was enthusiastically placing a DVD into the DVD player to the flat screen TV. Cut it out, your father is calling you. Kushina giggled as she swatted Naruto's hand away from her bubbly. Kushina was in the kitchen making Christmas cookies. She was wearing a lovely pink button-down versus neck cardigan sweater with a loose-fitting jean skirt. Naruto walked into the living room and plopped on the couch. He took his cell phone out of his pocket and started browsing Facebook, completely uninterested in what his father had to show him. Even though it was Christmas Day, Naruto couldn't shake the thought that his father was now the third wheel under his roof. Well darn, where is the remote for this thing? Minato asked while searching the shelves for the DVD player controller. Naruto looked up at his father and offered no help. In fact, he stared at Minato and felt a bit of pity for him. Kushina had concluded for a while now that Minato was only a shadow of the man he once was, but Naruto was starting to come to that realization as well. Minato was slowly balding and quickly packing on the extra pounds. More importantly, not putting the effort in being the husband-father he needed to be. I put a bunch of home movies on a DVD a few days ago. DVD dad, does anyone know what those are anymore? Fine, you can take this and you can put it on your devices. Where were you this morning? Minato said as he put the phone to the side of his face. He got up and walked into the kitchen. Kushina reached behind them and grabbed the large heavy throw blanket that was draped over the back of the couch. She fanned out the blanket over her in Naruto's lap. Kushina looked over into the kitchen area where she could see Minato standing with his back facing them. The oblivious father stared out the window at the snow in the backyard. Naruto didn't know what his mother was doing until she leaned against his side and reached to the one button in front of his plaid loose-fitting pajama bottoms. The blanket covered her roaming hands as she continued to watch Minato's movements in the kitchen. Kushina expertly popped the front of the button and reached in with her warm soft left hand. She fished out her son's hardening boner through the opening on the front of his PJs. Kushina immediately started jacking her son off under the big throw blanket. The thick fleece covering was bouncing up and down rapidly over Naruto's lap. His eyes were occasionally glazing over from his mother's expert grip. The scene was surreal. On the flat panel 65 inches LED TV showed a video of Naruto at 9 years old on a sled on a big red sled. Kushina was behind him on the sled, ready to push Naruto down the snowy hill. Minato was normally videotaping, so most of the footage consisted of Naruto and his friends or Naruto and his mother. After sliding to the bottom of the steep hill, Minato and Kushina slid down in their own sleds to meet Naruto at the bottom. "That was awesome," a young Naruto said into the camera as they met at the base. Out of nowhere, Kushina tackled her young son into the snow bank. They playfully rolled around the snow while laughing and giggling. "Sweetie, go easy on him. You don't want to embarrass him, and word to get out that his mom beat him in a snow fight." Minato's voice came from behind the camera as he continued videotaping. The warm comfy blanket continued to jut up and down to Kushina's hard and fast stroke session. Naruto's mind wandered as he watched himself and his mother roll around in the snow on the TV. He realized that might be the first time he experienced getting a boner. Perhaps wrestling with his gorgeous mother in the snow catapulted him into puberty. Kushina leaned a bit closer and put her head close to the side of his face. Her hot breath on his neck snapped him back to the present. Naruto looked down to his lap and only saw the heavy blanket violently hop up and down. He felt himself get steel hard and start to breathe heavily. Kushina didn't say a word but just poured herself into making him release for the 4th time today. Naruto turned and faced his mother through half-open glazed-over eyes. Her strong left arm was shaking hard from the intense beating she was giving him. The quick jerk motions caused her whole body to shake and her hair was bouncing slightly. She removed her tight gripping hand off her son's beefy tool and brought it quickly up to her mouth. Kushina then licked her entire palm and fingers to give it a slick surface. Naruto's was so hard that the blanket tented up as it fell around his groin. His mother reached back underneath the blanket and swiftly resumed her mission. The blanket began to bounce again. "Okay, we'll see you soon then. Don't forget to get the whiskey," Minato said to Trish over the phone. As he turned back towards the living room, he hung up the phone. Kushina stopped her manual assault on her sons. She didn't let go of the large member, fearing the boner would pop up through the blanket. Instead, Kushina pressed the hard shaft down along his left leg. To Naruto, this felt amazing, but also slightly painful. His beefy pulsated in his mother's tight grip. "Sounds like they are going to be over in about an hour," Minato said as he came over to the couch and sat down next to Kushina and Naruto. Naruto and Kushina's hearts were skipping beats at this moment. "Oh, this was a fun one," Minato said, pointing at the TV. Kushina put her head on Naruto's shoulder as she watched the video play out. With motherly affection, she rubbed the side of her face on her son's shoulder while the nostalgic scene on the television played out. On the video, out walked Kushina wearing a long-sleeve red silky robe with white snowflake prints all over it. The satin cover-up was really short and tied together by a thin waist tie. She walked into frame and sat down with Naruto, who was at the base of the Christmas tree. She was leaning back against the side of the couch, watching Naruto open his next gift. The wide angle of the camera showed the sides of Kushina's long luscious legs. Kushina sat on her meat and pressed her legs against her chest as she happily watched Naruto rip through the presents. Naruto remembered that morning vividly and recalled seeing between his mother's legs and gawking at her puffy mound that was bulged through her white panties. Kushina felt Naruto's twitch in her hand. She decided to keep a grip on his thick beefy until she found an opening to get up. Suddenly the dryer went off from downstairs. "Minato, can you take the towels out of the dryer and put them into the bathrooms? I have a splitting headache." Minato got up and headed downstairs. Kushina kept her head on her son's shoulder and made sure the coast was clear before making any moves. "Listen and watch out for your father," Kushina whispered as she shifted her body and lowered her head toward Naruto's lap. She quickly burrowed and now was completely covered by the large blanket. Naruto felt Kushina's tongue on the sides and head of his. Kushina's boiling hot mouth felt like heaven on the tip of his. Naruto was already extremely worked up and he knew that it would take a long time for his scrotum to detonate. Kushina knew only had a few minutes to make her son blow his balls. The blanket bounced quickly as his mother bobbed her head. She had cupped her son's balls with her left hand and jacked off the shaft at her right. Her entire body was lying to the right of him on the couch and she rested her right shoulder on Naruto's stomach. Woo, Naruto said under his breath. He instinctively spread his legs a bit more as Kushina's left hand expertly massaged his aching nutsack. Kushina bobbed her head again, now slamming her head down as far as she could physically go. The wet smacking noises that were coming from Kushina's throat were muffled by the thick throw blanket that laid over her. Naruto was on the ropes, sort of speaking. Kushina enjoyed seeing Naruto's wet filth extend out of the front slit of his PJ bottoms. She clamped onto the plump tip of the formed a tight suction with her humid mouth. She beat hard on the entire shaft with her hand. Naruto's breathing became erratic and his whole body became tense. Suddenly Kushina popped her head off of her son's and from underneath the warm blanket. She quickly wrapped the blanket tight around Naruto's twitching. Kushina heard the dryer shut from downstairs and the stairs began to creak. They realized quickly that Naruto's father was on his way back to join them. "I know, honey." Kushina was clearly annoyed but kissed her son on the side of her face. "Hey guys, still watching the videos?" Minato said as he casually walked past his wife and son on the couch. Minato tossed the freshly washed laundry basket down on the couch at the foot of the stairs. He walked over and joined Kushina and Naruto on the couch. "Minato, can you bring that upstairs? My back hurts and I'm extremely tired. I still have to start dinner." "No problem, babe. We've having Christmas ham, right?" "Of course, Minato. Any other requests?" Kushina said sarcastically. "Love you too, the joy of my life," Minato quipped back. Minato walked upstairs. "Quick, honey." Kushina quickly reached under her jean skirt and pulled off her panties. The full-back silky red panties were one of Naruto's favorites even though they were much larger than the tiny thongs she wears for him. What Naruto wasn't expecting next was Kushina putting the red panties on her head and laying on her back on the couch. Still in her tight pink cardigan and skirt, Kushina spread her legs to reveal her juicy cunt. "Jesus mom, hurry up son, mommy is all yours." Naruto jumped on top of his mother. With his left hand extended for support, he used his right hand to guide his still hard boner into his mother's waiting. Naruto raging hard on slipped right in as Kushina was still wet from blowing him a few minutes earlier. "Listen for the stairs, sweetie," Kushina whispered. Naruto hooked his mother's long athletic legs onto his broad shoulders. This caused the denim skirt to reveal more of Kushina's hips and lower stomach. He was so worked up that he quickly began pounding his mother into the couch with deliberate and forceful jabs. "Pound out a quickie with mommy," Kushina said through the silky panties. Loud skin-on-skin slaps filled the living room. Kushina made cute subtle yelps each time Naruto connected. As he fast and hard, Naruto heard a familiar laugh coming from the television that was still playing old family Christmas videos. On the screen, Kushina was blowing kisses at the camera while she was being filmed making dinner. This time Naruto was holding the camera. "Love you mom, love you, Pookie." Kushina flashed another cute smile at the camera and waved him off. His mother's smile on the screen, the fast, and Kushina's panties on her face all caused Naruto to lose his load within 30 seconds. Kushina laid motionless and speechless, letting her son give her a quick beating. "Ah mom," Naruto grunted through his teeth, so he wasn't that loud. Naruto shot whatever soupy cum that was collected up in quivering nuts. Nothing made Kushina feel more alive than feeling her son explode inside of her. They both laughed as Naruto sat back on his heels. Kushina composed herself and put her panties back underneath the stylish skirt. Cum number 5 to 10 p.m., by the Christmas tree. Later that evening, after Minato went to sleep, Naruto convinced his mother to dig out that lovely red festive robe from Christmas a few years ago. There were only a few candles lit around the living room to add a warm glow to the room. The lights on the Christmas tree provided much of the luminosity in the large living room. Kushina sat up against the end of the couch at the base of the Christmas tree. She had on exactly what she had worn in the home video they watched earlier. She put on a brand new pair of white see-through G-string thong panties. However, she did not have anything else underneath the silky short robe. The only difference now was that Naruto had his face buried in his mother's needy cunt. He hooked his finger in the panties and moved to the side as he feasted on her right there under the tree. After about 15 minutes of rough fingering and sensual licking of her smoldering, Kushina felt that she was about to explode. She looked down between her legs to see Naruto probing with his fingers once again. "Faster baby, mommy is. Mommy is almost there," Kushina said as her face got extremely flushed. She recalled all the nasty things she did with her son throughout the day and she was so horny from it. Kushina thoroughly enjoyed engaging in dirty perverted acts with her son and more importantly, She loved how Naruto was becoming more proactive in their sinful relationship. Even though some words and actions were degrading toward his mother, he understood that she loved it and wanted more. Naruto, like a good son, worked over Kushina's like a madman. Suddenly a clear stream of juice shot out and soaked Naruto's hand, arm, and face. Naruto kept working his fingers and then dove to lick at her once again. Kushina came 2 times in a row, all while muffling her blissful screams into the palms of her hands. Naruto fished out his and immediately started rubbing himself with the freshly squirted love juice. After Kushina relaxed a bit, she noticed Naruto's hard-on poking through his PJ opening again. Naruto licked and lapped up Kushina's juice that was all around her inner thigh and she shifted to get to her knees, turned around, and bent over seductively. Her perfect heart shape was now staring Naruto right in the face. The extremely short robe slid up Kushina's mommy bubble butt as she leaned forward and placed her chest on the carpet. Then she placed her palms on the middle of her butt cheeks and then spread the fleshy globes wide apart, exposing her cute little behind the string of her thong. Naruto extended his tongue and forcefully dragged his tongue from his mother's, salivating to her sweet tenderness. He stroked 4 or 5 small quick licks at her puckered hole before burying his entire face into the long and deep crack. The horny teen pushed his face deeper and deeper into his mother's sweet butt cleavage. He grabbed the sides of her left and right cheek and pressed inward. The delicious flesh swelled and almost engulfed his entire face. Kushina moaned deeply as she felt her entire crack and butthole lapped up by her son's long wet tongue. Naruto wrapped his arms around the front of her mother's thighs and stomach. He pushed his mother backside into his head and smooshed face deeper into her precious flesh. Kushina twisted around and looked down at her only son, burrowing his face into her hips and legs. "Baby, I want number 5 deep in my mommy's fat butt," Kushina said in her best seductively, but quiet voice. Kushina crawled over to the beige ottoman that was in the middle of the living room. Naruto fisted all the juice and spit that was all over his hand into his head. While seductively shaking her hips back and forth, she lifted her flimsy robe. She hunched over the ottoman and stuck her white flesh towards her son. Naruto got behind her and lined up his boner to her hot. "Not there, baby. Mommy is still sore from everything we did today," Kushina said as she felt the tip of her son's. "I'm sorry, Mom," Naruto said nervously as his iron rod hardened. "Don't be sorry, Pookie. I wanted to encourage you to population 5 times today. I never said I was off limits." Naruto reached down and smeared more of his pre-cum around his shaft. "Mom, can you say what you said before?" Naruto requested as he tapped his piss slit against the invited butthole. "What, baby?" Kushina adjusted herself on her elbows. "Can you talk filthy again? You like when I talk like a depraved person," Kushina said as she arched her toward her son a bit more. "You like being balls deep in mommy's fat butt. Look at Naruto. My big butt is your Christmas gift." Naruto pushed him into his mother's small opening. His iron bar was sawed in and out of his mother's lubed up. He hunched over her backside and rested his chest on her upper back. The only thing moving was Naruto's hips so that he could pump. Kushina lifted her chest off the ottoman. Naruto immediately wrapped his arms around the front of his mother's body and cupped her large hanging. "Do you like the shape of my hips, baby?" "Oh God, yes," Naruto said almost by ear. He increased the pace. "Remember, you made them that way. You gave mommy her wide birthing hips," Kushina said and closed her eyes. Naruto could only groan and listen to his lovely red-headed mother talk about her body. The only lights on in the living room were the glowing Christmas lights and the TV. It's a Wonderful Life was playing on the TV and the volume was low so they could hear if Minato was coming downstairs. "Son, today you made a serious mess in my life. And on my face." Kushina shuddered as Naruto forced another thick inch into his mom. "That was so hot, Mom. You looked like one of those corn stars. I want to do that to you more." "Do what?" "Come on your face." Naruto pumped away. Kushina looked toward where the bottom of the stairs met the living room. She quickly sized up an escape plan if Minato were to come downstairs. "Honey, it was like one of those porno bukkakis. I looked at myself in the mirror before hopping in the shower and couldn't recognize myself. It was like 10 guys exploded all over my face." Kushina giggled a bit. "I can't get enough of your entire body. I want you every day," Naruto confessed to his mother. "Let's be honest, Naruto. You've had enough of my stupid face and dumb little twat. You're bored with them now. Now you can only focus on my round. My little boy has a big butt fetish, doesn't he? You want to worship my curves. You want to get lost in mommy's soft flesh." It was no secret by now that Kushina was masterful with dirty talking and knew the right trigger words for her son. Naruto continued to be amazed at how descriptive she could be in the moment. In addition, Kushina knew that younger men like hearing different things than older men do. Despite Kushina's age, she kept getting hornier and more insatiable as the years went by. I know what my son wants. You want to make your sperm dumpster. Being a cum toilet for your heavy cream is all my ample butt is good for, isn't it? I need to cum. Can I cum in your or should I pull out? Naruto said as he groped his mother's tits and thrusted. Tell me what you want to do. Kushina looked straight ahead and pushed her bottom towards her, signaling to him that she was ready for anything. Say it filthier. Convince me. Kushina all but hissed at her son. I need to jizz up your. Oh god. Naruto cut himself off and he felt his twitch hard. Up my what? Naruto hunched over his mother's back and his hips like a jackrabbit. The meat of Kushina's motherly tushy waved on every harsh incestuous impact. Up my what baby? Kushina asked again, being ruthlessly from behind. Naruto drove him into his mother with strong thrusts. He grunted with each stab. He grabbed on her bouncing tits once again and hammered. Her red robe was struggling to stay on. Kushina's hair flew around wildly along with the forceful hits. Kushina noticed that the slaps and grunts were getting a bit too loud. Wanting to hurry her son up, she jerked her body back with authority to meet her son's mighty drives. Make a mess. Make a big dirty mess. Ruin your mother. Naruto came extremely hard right as his mother said that last perverted line. He slammed deep which caused Kushina to yelp out loud. Naruto quickly put his right hand over his mother's mouth and hugged her tight from behind. From Naruto's piss slit shot a few medium-sized volleys deep into Kushina's. Still bent over the ottoman, Kushina felt her son shudder as he shot his fifth load of the day. The intense cum caused Naruto to cringe loudly and shake. Naruto put his face into the back of Kushina's chestnut-thick hair and tried his best to regain his breath quickly. Naruto repeated, under his breath for a full minute as he continued to slice into his mother's plump tunnel. After about a minute of post-orgasmic bliss, Naruto started to soften inside his mother's tight dirty hole. He playfully fell onto the ground and smiled. Kushina fell next to him and snuggled onto his chest. Merry Christmas honey, Kushina said as she kissed her son's muscular chest. Merry Christmas mom, Naruto said on his back looking up with a big grin on his face. Kushina got up from the floor. She readjusted her robe and white transparent thong properly. Go get some orange juice or something. We have almost an hour before midnight to get one more out of you. Kushina said while picking the crotch of her thong out of her moist cunt. Mom, I can't. I wish I could. 5 is a record. I didn't raise a quitter, Kushina said disappointedly as she disappeared into the kitchen. Naruto paused and absorbed his mother's admission. I'm in love, Naruto said to himself. The day after New Year's Day, Minato and Naruto sat at the breakfast table and enjoyed some waffles. Naruto paid more attention to his Twitter feed on his phone and Minato read the newspaper. Kushina poured some orange juice for her husband and son. I got a call yesterday from Betty. You remember Betty, right? Kushina said as she put the orange juice back into the refrigerator. Yeah, how is she doing? What did she call you for? Minato said, cutting into his waffles. She said she came across some photos on the fitness center's Facebook page. The promotional ones after the renovations. And, Minato said while shoveling a large fork full of waffles. And, she made an offer for me to do some modeling. Kushina said while leaning against the kitchen counter sipping on her OJ. What? Minato cut Kushina off. Yep, we were discussing some small photo shoots. Just around the gym, Kushina continued. You're not considering this, are you? Minato asked. I am. She talked about a new line of gym clothes. Shorts, yoga attire, stuff like that. Are you serious? Are we seriously having this conversation? We agreed that you wouldn't model anymore. I don't want people on the internet gawking at my wife. I don't want guys at the office. Quote. It's only fitness clothes for older women. You act like I am doing porn. Kushina snapped back. Naruto just continued eating, pretending not to care about his parents arguing. You know, most husbands would be proud to have a wife that would be asked to model. Especially when I am almost 40. Kushina said as she felt herself getting angry. Naruto, Minato yelled. Naruto snapped attention from his phone. Please talk some sense into your mother. I have to get to work. Minato got up from the table and grabbed his briefcase. Minato, you are really overreacting. Kushina yelled at Minato as he made his way toward the door. Minato quickly stormed out of the house and slammed the front door behind him. Wow, I can't believe him. Kushina's eyes started to tear as she stood in the kitchen stunned at her husband's reaction. Mom, Dad is crazy for yelling at you like that. I can't believe him. I've given everything up for him. I loved modeling. She was shocked by her husband's overreaction. You are a beautiful woman. Old, but very beautiful, Naruto said, trying to make his mother laugh. Shut up, Kushina smiled through her tears. If it means anything, I think you should do it. Does it pay a lot? Naruto asked. Well, it's part of the gym, so I don't know. I didn't even ask. I was just excited that I was offered. I am almost 40, Kushina answered. Naruto got up from his seat and walked over to his mother. He put his hands on her hips, pulled her against his body, and planted a sensual kiss right on Kushina's full lips. Call Betty and tell her you'll do the spread, Naruto said confidently into his mother's doughy eyes. Kushina melted in her son's warm embrace. She slowly put her hands onto her son's wide shoulders. She felt her son's love and she quickly began to forget the exchange she just had with her husband. Looking into Naruto's blue eyes made Kushina forget about everything else in the world. A week later, Minato, Naruto, and Kushina sat around the breakfast table again. I am glad you came to your senses and turned down the modeling gig. Kushina didn't say anything as Minato got up and grabbed his coat and walked out. So when is the photo shoot again? Naruto asked his beautiful mother. In June, and I just heard from Betty that they are thinking of flying me out to the Caribbean for a few days for a few remote shots. That's great, Mom, Naruto said eating his mother's famous Belgian waffles. And I am thinking of bringing a special someone, Kushina said as she put dishes into the sink and grabbed a rag. Oh yeah, Naruto looked at his mother from behind. Yeah, it could be a week of beaches and bikinis. Is something my little boy can handle. I am not a little boy anymore, Naruto said as he noticed his mother hadn't even touched her breakfast yet. Don't I know it, honey, get up on all fours on the dining room table. What? Naruto said confusingly. Take off your shorts, Kushina said as she continued wiping down the counter. Okay, lean down so that you are resting on our elbows. Kushina put her plate of waffles under her son as he awkwardly sat on his elbow and knees on the dining room table. Naruto was wondering what his perfect mother had in mind. Scoot back to the edge of the table. Spread your legs a bit. Kushina stood at the edge of the table as her son was presented in front of her. Naruto's chubby wasn't fully hard yet, but that would quickly change. Naruto's eye shot open as his mother and licked away his balls from behind. She reached from behind and jerked her son hard as she began kissing the back of his strong muscular hamstrings and cheeks. The horny mother focused on one thing, making her boy cum hard while tongue his taint and. Naruto grunted and blew a flurry of cum shots all over his mother's breakfast. Cum rained down sticky semen and coated the two Belgian waffles like maple syrup. Jesus, that's so disgusting, Kushina said as she watched her son's semen was being dumped on her fresh hot waffles. Thick cloudy baby batter filled the ridges and grooves all around the hot cake. Once his balls were empty, Kushina stopped jerking off her son and helped him down off the dining room table. Kushina pushed the plate over to her normal side of the table and sat down. She grabbed a fork and knife and began cutting into the fluffy waffle. Naruto sat across the table and watched his mother's knife dig right through a cloudy gathering of cum and cut through the soft waffle. She cut off a section of waffle and began eating her breakfast with her son's cum all over her warm breakfast. She turned on her iPad and began reading the NY Times while finishing her waffles. Kushina finished one waffle while completely ignoring her son. He masturbated to the perverted sight of his mother eating her breakfast with his cum plastered all over it. For a few minutes, Naruto jacked off extremely rough. He kept playing with himself as his boner never really dissipated. Without saying anything, Kushina walked to the side of the dining room table. She slid her plate over so it was in front of her. She cut up the rest of her waffles into little bits. The silver butter knife cut through the milky jizz. Kushina unceremoniously forked a few pieces and raised it toward her mouth. Kushina bent over the table and hiked up her short plaid skirt over her hips to show her tight black nylons. She angled the iPad toward her so she could keep reading the online news article. Naruto couldn't take it any longer and quickly shuffled over to his mother. He began slapping his engorged body on the roundest, most beautiful enclosed by the see-through pantyhose. The sheer material allowed for Naruto to see that his mother wasn't wearing any panties. Her milky white flesh looked stuffed in the stretch fabric. The horned-up son grabbed the butter knife and pierced a hole in the back seam of the nylons. With his strong hands, Naruto ripped the pantyhose open and Kushina's big motherly butt was fully exposed. Kushina yelped slightly and put her palms onto the table. Her attention was still on the iPad. The rip traveled up to the full length of her crack. For the next few minutes, Naruto ruthlessly killed his mother with all his might. He drove his hips and jammed as deep as he could. He put his hands into the nylon stockings and around the front of her wide hips so he could slam her mature bottom back and forth easily on his lap. Naruto used crude language, pulled at her hair, ripped more of her stockings, and smacked her big ample butt cheeks. All of which Kushina encouraged. As he pounded, he said horrible phrases like, "You're such a whore, nothing but a cum-eating mother. So dirty," grunting louder and more forcefully as he. Kushina smiled to herself, knowing how she had such a perverted effect on her son. Naruto suddenly stopped, his heart nearly raced through his chest. "Take another bite," he said, standing still with his lodge deep in Kushina's twat. Still slightly bent over the table, Kushina reached her hand over to the propped-up iPad and scrolled down, indicating she wanted to read the rest of the article. Then she casually forked the last few bites of the cum-covered waffles. There was a long single string of cum on the edge of the plate. With her fork, she dipped and smeared the waffle into the slimy nut substance. Kushina put the fork to her delicate mouth and ate it. Naruto's rock hard twitched as he watched his mother eat his cum. She chewed and deliberately swallowed hard. She was showing off but still paid no attention to her son. Naruto pushed Kushina's gray and red plaid skirt further on the small of her back and resumed his savage. "You like eating my cum, Mom?" "No," Kushina hissed back quickly. "No, I just watched you." Kushina was teasing her son. Her big tits bounced hard inside her dress and Victoria's Secret yellow bra. She took the beating her son was giving her. She was loving being treated like a piece of meat. "Why don't you like it?" "It's disgusting," Kushina continues with her son. Naruto bores at his mother's backside. Whatever skin Kushina had exposed was taking a beating and the slapping echoed off the walls of the dining room. "Then why did you jerk me off on your waffles and eat it?" Naruto grunted loudly. "Because I'm a filthy disgusting cunt." "Jesus Mom, I love you. Why do you think eating my cum disgusting?" "Because of how gooey and salty it is. The fact that it's being stored up in the bottom of a disgusting pair of balls. Yours especially, so thick it sticks to the roof of my mouth and throat as I swallow it. I can chew it like gum." Kushina was getting really hard at this point. It was hard for her to maintain her demeanor. "God damn you dirty whore. Tell me you want to eat my cum," Naruto commanded as he felt his nuts twitch. "I want to eat all your gross semen. Louder, tell me. I want to eat my son's sperm." Naruto savagely threw his mother against the table in response to her dirty talk. "God, I'm so stupid. Next thing you know, I'm letting you piss in my face." "That really is disgusting. You would do that?" Kushina purposely didn't answer right away. In fact, she wasn't sure she wanted to open that door. But it was extremely hot to talk about it. Naruto felt the same way. Naruto and slammed away. Kushina looked forward. "I guess a disgusting cunt like me doesn't have a choice in the matter, do I?" "Mom, get on your knees." Kushina spun around, got on her knees next to the table, and looked up innocently at her son. Her loose-fitting dress fell back into place. Her hair was slightly, right hand flew up and down his 8 inches thick soaked in his mother's hot juice. "Open your mouth as wide as you can." Kushina opened her mouth extremely wide. Her lovely jaw dropped, and the sides of her pink lips stretched. Her lovely eyes locked in on her son. The submissive wanton mother tilted her head back a bit more and slowly extended her wet tongue as far as she could. She wanted to present him with a perverted look that would make his balls explode like an atom bomb. She was hoping her open mouth and dangling tongue would be etched in her son's brain forever. Naruto placed the tip on the end of Kushina's long, wide tongue. "Eat my cum, Mom," Naruto grunted loudly. Naruto used his mother's mouth as a cum catcher as if it were one of his old dirty socks. Kushina didn't move as Naruto jerked off a few shots of cum into his mother's wide open mouth. He wiped the remnant drops around his piss hole across her tongue, using it like a jizz towel. She swallowed everything her son gave her and eventually stood up. Naruto watched in awe as his mother looked him in the eyes and opened her mouth wide to show him her now empty mouth. "Have a good semester. You're going to be late for the first class," Kushina said as she gave her out-of-breath son a quick kiss on his sweaty cheek.